because
it's more safe to have this
it's
one.
very good, you know,
Yeah.
to have those
Yeah.
speeches all.
Yeah, it's very good.
EWORA.
To bring, I am not sure that if we are going now the tour directly from here. So.
Because I will have to leave you earlier a little
Yeah,
bit,
yeah.
because I have to prepare.
Yeah, that really helps.
Good morning. My name is Nomeda Gudelienė. I'm advisor to Deputy Rector on Sustainable Development at Mykolas Romeris University, as well as coordinator of equal opportunities and gender equality at our university. It is a great privilege and pleasure for me to moderate this important event. And as all of us know that universities worldwide are hierarchical institutions. There is the distribution of power. Universities are based on evaluations. And all universities around the world are struggling how to ensure just, secure environment for our students, for our professors, for the societies and the future society that is coming to the world. And to start this important seminar, I would like to invite Professor Inga Žalėnienė, Rector of Mykolas Romeris University, to make a welcoming address.
Dear participants of this important EWORA seminar, dear partners, dear friends, Dr. Honoris Causa of Mykolas Romeris University, Professor Gulsun Saglamer. It's very honorable that you are here with us today. It is a pleasure and honor for all our community to welcome all of us gathered here today, both on-site in this auditorium and online. I am sure that online we have participants from all over the globe, so hello for everyone. And we are ready today to discuss the urgent and sensitive issue of creating society free from gender-based violence. I am very pleased that today we have even two presidents of EWORA, the current president, Professor Kerstin Tham, and the former president, founding mother of EWORA organization, Professor Gulsun Saglamer, along with all the board of European Women Rectors Association. EWORA as organization is dedicated to promoting women in leadership positions within academia and advocating for gender equality in higher education and research at both European and international levels. And it is crucial that representatives also from political leadership, non-governmental organizations and civil society joined us to this expert discussion, and hope we will have a possibility to interact with them. Talking about the thematics of today's seminar, I want to emphasize that data collected by United Nations entity for gender equality and the empowerment of women shows that gender-based violence is a global pandemic, affecting one in 3 women in her lifetime, as staggering statistics. And it is important to recognize that this issue not only has devastating impacts on survivors and their families, but also imposes significant social and economic costs. According to the World Bank statistics, in some countries, violence against women costs up to 3.7% of GDP, more than twice the average government spending expenditure on education. So across the European Union, the cost of gender-based violence is estimated at 366 billion euros per year, with violence against women accounting for 79%. Failing to address this issue has profound long-term consequences. Numerous studies show us that children who grow up in environments of violence are more likely to experience and perpetrate violence themselves as adults. The urgency of addressing gender-based violence is amplified by complex global challenges, such as economic instability, climate change, social inequality, geopolitical tensions, and military conflicts. It's worth mentioning that rates of online harassment and abuse are also alarmingly high, according to the recent studies. So reducing violence against women and girls requires a community-based, multi-pronged approach and sustained engagement of diverse stakeholders. The active involvement of academic communities worldwide is crucial in development and implementing effective initiatives that address the underlying risk factors for violence, including social norms around gender roles and the acceptability of violence. I hope that this EWORA seminar, held in partnership with Mykolas Romeris University, will provide us with the latest scientific evidence, organizational practices, and tools to identify and prevent gender-based violence, contributing to societal progress. Dear participants, it has taken for humanity centuries to recognize women's rights as an essential part of human rights. Progress towards achieving women's rights and building a society free from gender-based violence has fallen short of expectations. Yet every step towards a sustainable, inclusive society is essential. I am confident that we will persist in pursuing a future free from gender-based violence and violence at all its forms. I wish you all a productive discussion and success in bringing your progressive ideas and concepts to a real our life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to invite the President of European Women Rectors Association, Professor Kirsten Tam, to make a welcoming address.
Thank you. And dear Professor and Rector Inga Saljaniene, and dear colleagues, I am very proud of welcoming you to this important seminar, Universities as Change Agents to Create a Gender-Based Violation-Free Society. I'm also very proud of being the president of EWORA, and that the former president of EWORA, Professor Gulson Salagmer, was installed as an honorary doctor at the Mykolas Romeris University yesterday. Congratulations, Professor Salagmer and the Mykolas Romeris University. And this important seminar is shared by EWORA and Mykolas Romeris University. And soon I will also talk about what we have done in Sweden. I was the former Vice Chancellor of Malmö University and also the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Karolinska Institutet in Stockholm. And I will soon talk about what we have done in Sweden to better understand the situation of gender-based violence and sexual harassment in academia. But first I would like to say something more general about the mission and agenda of EWORA. from my perspective. The global role of universities is more important than ever due to the complex global challenges we are facing. And gender equality, but also human rights and leadership in general, are challenged in and outside academia. And since universities are universal in character, we are sharing the academic values with each other around the world. And we are building networks through the research collaboration and teacher-students exchange. And we can continue our universal cooperations and support each other in situations of peace but also conflict. As leaders in academia, we need to enable responsible internationalization, not only in our own university, but also in our networks of universities. So, my point of view is that we are needed, and that the future of universities is bright, and that we will have an even more important role in the future. Global challenges like health, climate, or democracy challenges are growing in the world right now. And as university leaders, we need to take our academic responsibility for creating and sharing research-based knowledge, contributing to a more equal and sustainable society in the world. However, gender equality in general, as well as in academia, is challenged in the world, and we need to work for gender mainstream academic career pathways. We know from the statistics that it takes too long to make a change. In June, the board of EWORA had a workshop in Malmö, which resulted in a few focus areas or an agenda for what we want to do. And I will now pinpoint a few of these research-based focus areas. EWORA wants to raise awareness of the need for gender equality, and that we can learn from how countries like, for example, Norway, have worked systematically to increase gender equality. Therefore, we will continue to convene conferences and workshops, share senior leaders' stories, and enhance the university board's understanding of the need for mission-driven and values-based leadership in the strategic work to develop our universities. We also want to write reports and academic papers for publication. EWORA wants to outline and communicate the values-led leadership approach in higher education and the evidence base for its success. EWORA also wants to provide opportunities for mentoring, networking, and building of international partnerships among more junior leaders in academia. To do that, we need to involve more senior leaders who want to become mentors. EWORA also wants to provide training opportunities in female senior management and leadership, and we want to add dimensions to the already existing international programs. EWORA also wants to facilitate the systematic collection and sharing of data on gender equality and contribute to the development of appropriate methods for measuring outcomes and impact. To do this, we need to collaborate with others, of course, like, for example, the ongoing work within EWORA. As you can hear, EWORA has a very ambitious mission and agenda, and have had so during many years now. And we will not be able to reach our goals alone. So even if EWORA is a small member-based network organization, we can reach out by working together with other national and international groups and organizations, but also individuals, sharing the interests of EWORA. And this seminar is an example of how we wanted to work together with the university, national or international networks, sharing the interests of learning more about an important topic within the framework of EWORA. So, very welcome to this shared seminar, but also to become members of EWORA. In June, you are also very welcome to Warsaw in Poland. We have the host here, yeah, for a larger EWORA conference where you can help us to further develop and implement our EWORA agenda. So very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you.
Director, Chair. And actually, currently we're living in times our forefathers created the universities, the societal structures, and now it's our turn to think into the future. What kind of future society we can think of and dream of? And to have gender equality in our society, to create gender-based violations-free society, we need to think and to act now. It's now our time to act and to develop the society. And now I would like to continue our seminar with a panel discussion. And they kindly invite Professor Pamela Gills, former Vice-Chancellor of Glasgow Caledonian University, to speak and to give insights into the future, how universities can serve as change agents to create gender-based societies.
Well, dear colleagues, I'm really honoured to be here with you all today, in person in Vilnius and online, to chair today's seminar on gender-based violence and precisely how our universities around the world can act as change agents, enhancing our understanding of the issues within organisations and across societies, protecting, as Rector Inge mentioned, women's rights, and promoting action to progress us all towards gender-based violence-free societies. I don't have all the answers. I'm very much hoping our panellists will have some of the answers, and all of you online and in our audience today. Now, as Rector Inge has noticed, the evidence is startling, clear, and really deeply troubling. Data from numerous agencies, including the World Bank, United Nations Women, and the World Health Organization, estimate, as we've heard, that globally 1 in 3 women. Now that's over 700 women globally experience gender-based violence. And we know that economic crises, conflicts, and climate change are intensifying this gender-based violence. But, as has been noted, funding to end violence against women has actually been declining since 2018, and 99% of gender-related official development assistance does not reach local women's rights organisations fighting against this problem. Goodness knows where this money really does go. Not surprisingly, then, perhaps, the 2024 UN report on the Sustainable Development Goals and their gender snapshot notes that not a single indicator under the Global Gender Equality Goal has so far been achieved, with only 5 years to 2030. Now, many of our universities and research organisations across Europe that are working to advance our knowledge on these issues and how to change the situation across societies are themselves struggling with their own persistent gender inequalities and gender-based violence, including sexual harassment. So today's seminar couldn't really be more important and more timely. Our esteemed speakers have 12 minutes each for their presentation, and they include Kerstin Tam with an example of the value of data collection in a Swedish university. Isabel Capello-Gil will be joining us with a video on an intervention in a Portuguese context. Beth Strobel, here from the United States, on the role of leadership, policies and programs against gender-based violence and why they're so important. Vilana Pilinkete Sotirovic, I hope that's right, on the EU-funded UNICEF project. This is a tremendous project, and we're looking forward to hearing how that's impacting us. And Ramuni Yakstieni on the Erasmus Helsi project on gender equality in higher education. Now, there will be 30 minutes after all the presentations are over for us to accept questions from the audience, so please do think about your questions. And after each presentation, I will try to ask just one, sincerely difficult question of our panelists to see if we can tackle some of these thorny issues. So I'd like to pass over now to our first speaker, who is Kerstin Tam.
So perhaps you can. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. We have done a quite unique study in Sweden and on the national level, and in order to prevent gender-based violence and sexual harassment in the Swedish higher education sector. It started after the Me Too movement, and so the universities in Sweden, we had a lot of meetings, and the rectors, we wanted to do something, and then the three of the universities started this project. And the universities are Karolinska Institutet, which is a medical university in Stockholm, and KTH, which is the Royal University of Technology in Stockholm, and Malmö University, and I was the rector of Malmö University, and also the Secretariat for the National Secretariat for Gender Research. And we wanted to conduct a research and collaborative program on gender-based violence and sexual harassment to produce research-based knowledge because we didn't know enough, and to improve our working environment, of course. This is a part of how we work with improving our working environment. And to, in the end, improve quality of education and research, because this is also a quality aspect of what we do at the universities. And if we can do this together, we are stronger, of course. And you know, my role in this project was to be in the steering group and as a rector, and so now I will try to tell you something about the results from this national survey. But I'm not the researcher in this field, so but you can read the report in English, and there are also some scientific publications, because we really wanted to have it research-based. So we therefore wanted to use validated scales so that we could be able to make comparisons. And this was a long process, and also we started this project in January 2020, and you know what happened in March, I think it was, 2020. So this was, we conducted this project during the pandemic also. But that was both good and bad. And so we conducted a national survey with more than 100 questions based on these validated scales. And we had both questionnaires in Swedish and in English, and the questionnaire was sent to staff and doctoral students and students. And yeah. And so 125,000 were enrolled from the 38 higher education authorities, so it's quite a large study. And the 38 higher education authorities or universities are very different in many dimensions, but we got help from the National Statistic Authority in Sweden to do this. And it was also, from the beginning, very difficult to make some good definitions, of course. But we tried to use the definitions by the different measurements, the scales, and undesired sexual attention was not defined in the survey. It was self-perceived undesired sexual attention we used. But what was very interesting was the data on bullying, which was defined as being subjected repeatedly over a longer period of time to unpleasant or degrading treatment, which is difficult to defend against. And this was very common, I would say. So I will show you some numbers on that. And so this is also part, I think, of the academic culture we need to work on. Yeah. So, and the response rate, you know, it's a lot of people, and the employees, they were best in answering, but the response rate was quite good. We also conducted, of course, a pilot study first, and then we conducted the large study. And so you should also understand that the percentage estimates were estimated for the sector as a whole. So when you read the report, you need to understand this. But then, since we have the data, we can also use it for research purposes. So it's quite unique data. So we got primary data for a cohort of close to 39,000 individuals, employees, PhD students, and students, representing the Swedish situation. And one conclusion was that women and young people report high exposure to undesired sexual attention. And so you can see women at about 5% reported high exposure to undesired sexual attention. And that is not acceptable, I think. And students reported high exposure to undesired sexual attention, as you can see here. We have female students, but also male students. So that is also something we can learn from. That it's quite common, and I think it should be. We shouldn't tolerate this at all. The share who became aware that someone else had been exposed to undesired sexual attention was higher than those who report that they themselves have been exposed. And that is bystanders. It's used in some research about this, so we were not surprised. And when asking in your work or studies, how often have you experienced intrusive questions about your private life that made you feel uncomfortable? There were quite high numbers of especially female PhD students, and we can see that the PhD students are more exposed to this, but also other, both employees and students. And that was the PhD students more than 30%, and that's quite high numbers. And when asking about that in your work or studies, how often have you experienced sexually suggestive comments or jokes that made you feel intimidated? And that was also quite high among, you can see, especially PhD students, more than 25%. So, yeah. This is very important, I think. And when you're asked in your work studies, how often have you experienced underside sexually explicit emails, SMS, or messages on social media that offended you? It's not as high, but 8% among the PhD students and also students, and this was under the pandemic, so you know how it was at that period, during that period. And when asking in your work studies, how often have you experienced unwelcome touching, hugging, or kissing? Also, the PhD students experience this, more than 10%, and that is not okay. But then we also focus a little bit more on the PhD students and also try to understand better in which kind of disciplines or subject of study. And as you can see here, it was more common in the engineering science and also agriculture, veterinary science, but in all fields. But we also know from more technological universities that this can be more challenging. Yeah, and I think the most interesting results was about bullying, prevalence of bullying and work or study place in civility. I think the data on that was very interesting, also to learn more about the academic culture and what we need to do. And perhaps the importance of values-based leadership in the academia. Yes, and so female employees and PhD students reported highest exposure of bullying, more than 15%. And the bystanders also, there were higher numbers of the when reporting from other people. Also, if you try to focus on the PhD students and different subjects of study, you can see that science and engineering science were higher. The PhD students in these fields were more exposed, but also in all fields. So, what about underside sexual attention then? And the majority in all groups report that men have exposed them to underside sexual attention. So it's very common. And also, this is important, I think, also. It was primarily colleagues within the organization that exposed others to underside sexual attention, both in the PhD students groups and employees. And also the same for it was primarily other students that exposed students to underside sexual attention. And I think this is in line with previous research in the field. But this study is bigger, so larger. And this is also interesting that the reasons for not filing a formal report to the head of the department, for example, was that it was not that serious, I dealt it with myself, but most interestingly, I think it was that it would not have made a difference, and that is not good. 42% felt that it would not have made a difference. So we need to learn from this, I think. So finally, we also could do some analysis comparisons, and we found that those who are exposed to undesired sexual attention experiences less support from colleagues and fellow students. They experience less support from managers, teachers, supervisors, and they experience less recognition, listen to, and support from management. And those who are exposed to undesired sexual attention reports worse general health. We also had health measurement, experiences high levels of stress, experiences higher levels of burnout, and considers more often to leave their work or studies. So we can learn a lot from this, and still researchers are doing research on this data, and the project has also been acknowledged internationally, and you can read, for example, in Nature, an article about the study and the consequences. But this was the first step to know more about the prevalence and to understand better the situation in Sweden. And so we really initiated this big survey due to lack of knowledge. And so now it's so important, when we have this important knowledge, we can use this knowledge as a base for improvements in academia, of course. And I also think that other countries perhaps can use this data. But so in Sweden now we have research networks, and we have also people working in the gender area of gender support in our university and so on. They are also having meetings, and they are now trying to take the next step in how to prevent this better in academia. And as we will focus a little bit here also on that the incidence of vulnerability varies, which can give guidance as regards the focus for measures. So I think it's very important to measure, and we also, the different universities involved in this study, they also try to use the data, but some universities are too small to really use the data, but some are big. And so we also know that this vulnerability is a very difficult word, has consequences also, I think, for quality in what we do for education and research. So thank you very much for, and you will also be able to read the report. So,
thank you so much, Kerstin. Now, I'm asking you just one question.
Yeah.
I'm allowed
Yes.
just one question. So, fantastic study. We know data is important. It raises awareness. It can be used, as you said, to hold university management to account for implementing change. We know that society prioritizes for action things that it measures. But this situation's been going on for decades in universities. How can we use this kind of study to speed up change?
Of course, we should communicate the results, and we should really focus on that this is a research-based data. So, and we should, of course, use these validated scales, because it's very important to have valid and reliable results also. So But of course, we can't just measure, so we need to take the next step to action. And that is what also I think EWORA is we will try to work on.
Thank you so much, Kerstin.
Yeah,
It's
thank
great.
you.
And I do think collecting data is an action in and of itself, because it does raise awareness. And we look at the data and we go, oh my goodness, this is awful. We need to do something about it. So thank you for that. Our next speaker is actually Isabel Capello-Gill. And she's going to be on video because sadly she can't be with us today. So can we have Isabel's video, please?
Dear friends, in the possibility of being with you today for this EWORA seminar, I want to thank EWORA's president, Kerstin Tam, and the whole organization at the university in Vilnius for giving me this opportunity to share with you some insights on a program that I'm truly passionate about, Women Plus. It's a program that we decided to implement at Católica in Portugal as a way to move forward our new gender equality program and advance the role of women in the institution. And let me start perhaps with some elements and an assertion that many of you will certainly know. The statement by the first woman candidate to the American vice presidency, Geraldine Ferraro, who famously said in the 80s that some leaders are born women. Well, at the time she was pleading for an understanding amongst her constituencies that women too were not only prepared, but that it was rightful for them to take on leadership roles in politics, as in academia, or in other areas of society. As we all know, our field is one of those fields that has defended itself against the promotion of women. And this has been done not so much by dint of the policies implemented at the different institutions. I think we're quite fine where we are as far as policy is concerned, but it is basically the culture, the everyday culture. And notwithstanding from the fact that, as the Times Higher Education pointedly remarked in the last world ranking, that there was a record number of women at top universities, the fact of the matter is that when you look at the data, we're still talking worldwide of about 22 to 25% of women leaders. When we look at EUA data based on sheep figures, we see that that number comes down to 12%, with an astonishing 21% of women, or let's say the pool from where presidents, rectors, or vice chancellors are chosen. The pool, to that matter, reflects only 21% of that pool is made up of women. So despite the breakthroughs, the gender equality plans that we all had to implement in order to access European investment funds, we are still in a challenging mode. In the environment where my university operates in Portugal, I'm proud to say that 60% of the women working in let's say, 60% of the science workers are women, and that we've had a major breakthrough in the representation of women leaders, with 33% of rectors being women. But while that is so, and at my own institution, we have a breakdown of roughly 50 to 50 in terms of the composition of the leadership team. So while that is so, the fact of the matter is that when we look to the data of the universities themselves, and I'll share with you some data of my own institution, we see that the reality still needs to improve tremendously. When we look at the gender distribution at my own institution, we see that overall the majority of staff, be it administrative staff, academic staff, or researchers, the majority is clearly female. We have roughly 61% of female workers in the institution. But we do have a problem as far as the leadership roles that those women take in the institution are concerned. Likewise, when we look at the composition of the student body, that student body has become increasingly female. That speaks also to a certain transformation of the academic environment in my country, which is, I would say, not in itself positive. We don't, when we speak about equity and equality and equal opportunity, it is not also positive to consider this disadvantage on the way one of the genders has actually access to higher education. Just a brief framing of the institution. So we're a comprehensive university with 19 different faculties, ranging from the humanities to the health sciences, medicine, biotech, data engineering. So in that sense, this breakdown in our constituency also speaks to a transformation of the demographics in the student body. When we look at the composition of academic staff, though, we see where the problem is. And I'm sharing with you some data related to the composition of academic staff from 2020 to 2023. And we see that whereas on the assistant professor level, the recruitment strategies and the entrance are more or less equitable, as we move through the ranks to associate professors and specifically full professors, those numbers become quite problematic. And even more so when we look at recruitment data over the past 3 years alone. So I'm just bringing to your attention the last 3 years, and especially the full professor category. No females were admitted as full professors over the past 3 years. That, to my mind, has become something that is deeply concerning. Of course, we're talking about the period, the post-COVID period, when women did suffer tremendously with the impact of confinement. We extended, actually, the 10-year period so that our colleagues who were assistant professors or even associates could actually prepare a stronger portfolio for their promotion committees. But the fact of the matter is that these are numbers, they don't lie, and we have a problem. We have a problem in the promotion of women to the top category of the academic career. We have a problem, of course, in widening the pool of candidates for leadership positions in the schools and at the university level. And so you see, no matter how positive and affirmative our policies have been, ever since I took office 7 years ago, still, to that matter, the practice within the schools has somehow not been consistent with the philosophy and the policies that the university has implemented. And for that reason, I decided that it was important to rally the troops and create a new initiative, an initiative that could truly help our colleagues advance through the ranks. And that does not mean, in any case, lessening patterns, lessening qualities, but to mentor them and allow them to contribute let's say, to be more empowered to participate in the university environment, more confident in their publishing strategy so that their careers can advance. So we created 3 streams. We initiated the Women Plus initiative this spring, and the Women Plus initiative has 3 different streams. The first is the Academic Leadership Program for assistant and associate professors. And it is basically a pool of mentors who sign in, female full professors, but also some of our male colleagues have decided to sign in, to mentor our colleagues over a 1-year period and to prepare them for tenure, or to the habilitation that we also have in Portugal, which is the last degree before they are eligible to submit a candidacy for a full professor. The second stream is a stream dedicated to our graduates, because as with academics, we could see that in our graduates there was an increasing behavioral difference, of course, nothing else is to be expected, in the risk-taking mechanisms of our graduates, especially on the master's level. We asked 50% of male respondents, 50% female respondents on or the kind of risk level that they would take if after finishing their masters, were they ready to start their own programs, their own businesses, their own initiatives, or were they more likely to apply to a company that was already well established? Well, the fact of the matter was that the difference in answers was astounding. Out of the universe of respondents, only 42% of the women considered that they were ready to take a leap of faith and shape their future careers in an autonomous path, whereas 79% of the male respondents said this was the way they were willing to go. There was a similar question as far as leadership inside certain institutions were concerned, and the breakdown of responses was similar. So in that sense, we decided to create also within the scope of the Women Plus initiative a second stream called Adopt a Star, and for that purpose we gathered a wide group of female CEOs who will adopt graduates. This is a job shadowing, job mentoring program that is not new, of course. But the novelty here is that these women are not simply women in management or in business, but they are the CEOs who will take on, as an award, some of our top graduates to spend a year mentoring them on how to shape their future careers. And finally, the Women Plus Mentor Awards, made out of a pool of experts, national and international, who will select women who have excelled in accompanying and promoting their peers and mentoring their peers as they move through their academic careers. So this is Women Plus. We have started to implement the program in the spring, in May. It is now in its initial weeks, months, let's say, and we hope to be able to bring to you successful KPIs in 1 year's time, because we believe that leaders come in all shapes and genders. Thank you.
So, colleagues, the tough question I would have asked Isabel is, Isabel, how does the broader context of gender inequality in our universities affect the data on gender-based violence and sexual harassment? I think we all know that culture matters, but I'm an epidemiologist, so I really believe that we need more qualitative and quantitative data on culture surrounding female leadership and the levels there of violence and harassment. It would be fascinating. I don't even know, Kerstin, if the national data in Sweden can look at this element. I don't think it was in that Nature paper. So here's a question for our research agenda. Is this something we should be really concerned about? Does female leadership in our universities change the culture in a positive direction with regard to violence and sexual harassment? I'd love to know the answer. Maybe our next speaker, Beth, can give us some insight into what we need to do in that context to make this change, to shift the dial. Beth Strobel.
Well, thank you very much. This has been a wonderful learning opportunity so far, and I'm glad if what I talk about today advances the conversation by giving you just a bit of a U.S. context on this topic. And as you see, I will talk about the role of university leadership. And in the U.S., we have a very rich and long background of policies, and certainly university leaders have been creating programs since at least the 70s to address gender-based violence. But what I want to say by giving you a little quick tour through the history of what has happened in those policies since 1972 is to explain that while policies are absolutely necessary, and it's important that entities like the US government and states and other entities say that gender-based violence is actually against the law and illegal, it's not enough. And it is the engagement and the culture and the role of leadership that will make a difference. So I'll start again, as my colleagues have, with looking at, of course, the fact that Number 5, SDG number 5, gender equality, is part of the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The goal being to achieve gender equality and to empower all women and girls. And so, how are we doing? Oops, okay, now I need it to go back. There we are, thank you very much for your help. We're not on track. You've heard colleagues already say this, that harmful practices are in many ways decreasing in some parts of the world, but it's outstripped by population growth. So the fact is that gender-based violence and the consequences for girls and women continue to be a problem of humanity. 1 in 5 girls still marry before age 18. A staggering 230 million girls and women have been subjected to female genital mutilation. Far too many women still cannot realize the right to decide on their sexual and reproductive health, and violence against women persists, disproportionately affecting those with disabilities. So parity on women's leadership in public life continues to remain elusive. And in management positions at current rates, parity will require another 176 years. We're not going to make it by 2030, are we? Women carry an unfair burden of unpaid domestic care work, spending 2.5 times more hours a day on it than men typically. And all of this means that strong and sustained commitments to changing biased social norms, eliminating harmful practices, and abolishing discriminatory laws are urgently needed. Enhancing women's roles in leadership and decision-making, and adequately scaling up investments in gender equality on national, regional, and global scales are top priorities. That's the assessment of the United Nations Women and the Data Report, looking at progress on the SDGs. Well, against that landscape, the worldwide landscape, and we weigh recent developments that seem to really threaten progress that has been made on gender equality, we can understand the need for universities to function as change agents and to really address the deep-rooted inequalities that manifest in gender-based discrimination and violence. So let's look at the US context. There was landmark legislation in 1972 that actually brought the issue of civil rights that had been advanced in other legislation right into educational settings, and we'll look at that language in a moment. But this really did cause universities and schools to need to function as change agents to address these inequalities. Effective advocacy, public attention, legislation, court actions, all sorts of regulatory systems have been built around this legislation. And this context gave the needed impetus for universities to actually be responsible for ending gender-based violence. And so programs of prevention, investigation, adjudication, and prescribed punishments have all been legislated and regulated as part of the results of the 1972 legislation. But the dynamics of these systems and the assumptions on which they're based continue to evolve. And as I'm going to show you in a few minutes, they alternately expand and contract. The definition of who's covered and who's protected is broadened under one presidential administration, and it shrinks under the next, which means that at universities, being responsive and nimble and trying to make sure you're doing the right thing, but doing the right thing in a policy context is exceedingly complex and taxing. And so it's my point of view that absent leadership and a true commitment to inclusion and equity, without the laws and regulations, this is really the issue. Laws and regulations take you so far. True commitment to equity and to equality is what's needed. So it's the history of how these anti-discrimination laws came to be, starting with 1972, that helps to make that case. All right, here's the actual language from 1972. No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. What an incredibly broad statement was created in the 1972 legislation. And so, knowing what we know now about how life works, you can imagine that each one of those terms and definitions and implications has been picked apart and explored and contested in legal settings for decades, truly. So from 1972 to 2010, decades were spent debating on, well, which athletics and which sports does this really apply to? Does it even apply to sports? Do we have to let women compete in school sports? And this went back and forth for decades. Now, you know from that language, it didn't say that it was only about sports and athletics. But for decades, that's where the debate happened. And it was an important one because we know from looking at women's leadership that the opportunity to compete in athletic settings has been truly the background for many women to have what it takes to excel in leadership positions. So it was an important point, but it was really the focus. Well, then in 2011, an important change happened. And we're just going to go through this history very quickly. I want to just sort of illustrate how it is that with each presidential change in the United States, the rules change. So President Obama in 2011 decided to use the Title IX language to say, I'm interpreting this that universities have to protect students from sexual harassment and sexual violence. This was brand new. I had just begun my chancellorship in 2009. So, and just thank you, this would be greatly helpful. And so I came into this role knowing that this was truly a remarkable change for us at the university, and it was important for us to try to get this as right as we could. And I'll come back to that in a moment. But then you can see it took 3 years for guidance to come out to say, well, what does that really mean? What must you do as a university? We didn't waste those 3 years. We worked on task forces during that time. But then we also got guidance in 2016 saying, oh, we're also going to consider that this includes protecting the rights of transgender students. But then the presidency changes. In 2017, that's rescinded, no longer required. Then in 2017, they also decided to rescind the guidelines from 2011 and 2014. And then we got new temporary guidance that said new standards of evidence and new ways to resolve cases. Then in 2018 to 2020, new rules again saying you must have live hearings and you must allow cross-examination. All of this you can see is testing whose rights prevail. Is it the individual who files the report or the individual who is responding to the report? And you can imagine the chilling effect this has on filing reports in any shape or form. So then, 2021, new presidency again. Executive orders now affirm the protections for sexual orientation or gender identity and say new Title IX rules are coming. 2022, we get new proposals and new things floated to see whether single investigators could actually make the decision rather than sort of a jury-like setting in a live hearing. And then in 2023, they decided, well, perhaps we need a separate Title IX regulation that this time will deal with the challenges that are faced by transgender athletes. And then in 2023, the Education Department again misses its deadline for telling us what that actual rule is going to look like. 2024, we get it. And then in 2024, as soon as the new rule comes out, including one for transgender athletes and one for the more general cases, multiple injunctions are filed, lawsuits are brought, and so the patchwork in the United States right now is that depending on which of the 50 states you're in, the new rule may apply or the new rule may not apply. So you can understand the quandary this creates for trying to use laws and regulations as the means. I'm clearly touching the screen in ways that are not helpful here, sorry. That just create, depending on Title IX and the rules and regulations to guide what your actions should be, you have to, because the penalties for not following the rules are substantial. And the intent is certainly a wonderful one to say that it's illegal to have gender-based violence, sexual harassment, all of the kinds of things that we know come under that umbrella of that vague language, but it's not enough. So it's my point of view that there's a compelling need for local and global engagement that really focuses on prevention and addresses the fundamental issues that underlie gender-based violence and discrimination, and that is bias. So what have I done, and what have I done in the organizations I've been part of, and what did Webster University do while I was chancellor? We took in 2011, when the first reinterpretation of Title IX was coming out, the point of view that we're going to say that this isn't about the law, it's about us. It's on us to stop the kinds of bias and discrimination and violence that we know is very prevalent. And so I'll give you my email at the end of this presentation. If you want links to some of these resources, I will certainly be glad to send them to you. This is a little video that students and I created together to try to build awareness and kind of camaraderie and say, it's about all of us, it's not just about some of us. And then what did we do in terms of engaging the campus? We had a task force that had faculty, staff, students on it. We had work groups. We created a dedicated website with resources. We created these student peer mentoring and tutoring programs and support. We started out with voluntary training. It is now required. We had dedicated offices and staff. This continues to grow. Student-led programming and grant-funded support that came from the federal government to create more programs of awareness and bystander training. But then, in 2017, when Webster signed an MOU with an NGO, ARDN for short, African Renaissance and Diaspora Network, this was a true turning point in our ability to cast this in a global view. So the African Renaissance and Diaspora Network is an internationally active NGO, functions in consultation with the United Nations, and their goal is to mobilize youth worldwide, particularly in Africa and the diaspora, to understand the importance of achieving that 2030 blueprint. And during the time period that we've been active with them, they focused on SDG 5. So you see the red card, and we have distributed red cards. If you didn't get one, who will you?
2 minutes.
Yes. What I want you to understand is that the red card has been what I have used with university colleagues and particularly students to help have the conversation about how prevalent violence, gender-based violence and discrimination is, how important it is for this to get our attention, and what forms it takes, and how we can combat it on a personal level as well as a leadership level. So the Webster Red Card Task Force began at the United Nations meeting that ARDN had in partnership with the United Nations Women. It then went to a joint proclamation between the city of Webster Groves, where Webster's home campus is, and Webster University. You can see student athletes there all raising a red card pledge and saying, I personally will do all it is in my power to end gender-based violence and discrimination. And then during the pandemic, we had a year-long campaign. We created materials with QR codes, we had events, we used social media, we did all kinds of things that raised awareness. And then it culminated with, at our commencement, having Dr. Jibril Diallo, who's the president and CEO of ARDN, receive an honorary doctorate and present the address. So I invite you to join me in raising a red card, saying that you personally will take on leadership to end all forms of discrimination and violence against women and girls. And if you want the Red Card Toolkit and additional resources that were created by Webster and ARDN and other organizations I'm active with to engage other people in having the conversation and preventing gender-based violence and discrimination, I'm glad to be a resource.
Thank you. So, Beth, I am not going to ask you what you think will happen if past President Trump or Vice President Harris wins on the 5th of November. I am going to ask you a tough question, though. There's evidence that once a female leader in a university steps down, a male is more likely to succeed her and then overturn her policies and programs. How can we prevent positive cultural change being undermined?
You know, there is evidence, and certainly I've been doing some research on the presence of women as higher education leaders in the United States. And after decades of being sort of in the upper 20%, we had in the last record, 2024, reached 30%. And in the Midwest part of the United States, where I live, it had reached 33%. Everything that I know about, you know, sort of tipping point research says that 1 in 3 is an important moment. So I felt that the Midwest, at least, was getting to the point that we might actually get towards the 50%. But it depends on when women step down, being succeeded by women. That's the only way you get there. And it's not happening with the prevalence that it should to make sure that that 1 in 3 actually continues to get to gender parity. It depends on leadership and institutions in the United States on governing boards. I mean, they ultimately make the decision. And so the number of women on those governing boards matters. Their support for women matters. And it's the only way, raising awareness and building engagement on every single level from the top down. It is a tipping point in the country on November 5th, and we'll either make progress or we won't in the cause of gender equality, and we'll stay tuned.
Thank you so much, Beth. And we're certainly going to be looking at boards of governors of universities in EWORA's research agenda and how women on boards make a big difference. Did you want to say?
I just wanted to thank bringing forward the time scale. Just 50 years of like evolving. It's such a short period of time, and not much has happened during those 50 years. Like, we are so slow to learn, though the topics are so evident and clear. So thank you very much for sharing your experience.
Our next speaker is, I believe, local. Yes? It is. It's Dr. Vilana Pilin, I'm going to get this wrong again, Pilinkete Sotirovic. Perfect. No, it wasn't. It was terrible. Absolutely.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Fonameda and Professor Inga Želėnienė, for inviting me today to share the knowledge from very huge project, UNICEF project, that was Horizon 2020, a project funded by European Commission. And actually, it started in 2021 and finished just this year, 2024. During that period, yeah, it was an interesting journey, I would say, journey in European universities to see what's going on in the policies, in implementation, in prevalence, consequences of gender-based violence. So, yeah, it was a huge project, but I will share just a very small part of this. So, as I told, it's, you know, like, it is a website that you can visit anytime, and I think that it will be public, this presentation, so that you can go and dig it much more in depth. So in this project, what we wanted to do, so to collect knowledge. And on the one hand, yes, we wanted to see the prevalence and consequences of gender-based violence, but when we collected knowledge, that we collected knowledge on legislation on the national level, on the institutional level, what universities have in place, what policies they have on gender equality and gender-based violence, how it is included. We wanted also to do, and we did a quantitative survey and also qualitative survey of the individual stories, and also case studies that, universities that participated in our project, those who had some measures on gender, like prevention or protection, gender-based violence. So, like to have this knowledge, how it was created, what was the design, and what is the implementation and results. So it's a really huge, huge project. And based on that knowledge, our intention was to create tools for universities to start the policies if they do not have, or to improve their policies, because basically all universities that participated, it's 45 universities all over European countries, including EU and accession countries, that they have, but how to improve that implementation would bring effective results to eliminate gender-based violence, stop gender-based violence. And of course, the third, our task was to disseminate knowledge that we collected and empower universities to implement the tools, or at least to look to them and to find their own ways how to make universities safe environment, and also to change the culture, that it would be open to everybody, and would make all the communities feel free to be as they are, without any kind of experiencing violence, any kind of violence. So in today's presentation, I will share a little bit knowledge on prevalence, and will concentrate on tools. So as we did a huge like survey of the participating universities. So at the beginning, it was like we wanted to do in 45 universities. During the process, there were a lot of, turmoils that, some universities dropped down. They didn't want the university to have a questionnaire about especially sexual violence. Some universities just like refused to participate, and then refused to participate in later events. So, but at the end we managed, so we had 46 universities from 15 countries, and we collected 42,000 respondents from all these universities who responded to the survey questionnaires. Of course, according to the countries, there was a different response rate, and in some universities it was very low, in some much higher. But in general, we have like 42,000 responses, so we think it's a huge pool of data. And what this data show us, show not very optimistic picture. Basically, from all those respondents who answered the questionnaire, up to 62% of respondents stated that they experience any form of gender-based violence, and it's quite a lot. We ask about the forms of violence, about psychological, sexual harassment. As we can see, it's the most popular evidence that psychological violence and sexual harassment is one of the most prevalent cases in the universities. But also we should think that in the questions we did not ask, did you experience psychological violence? We asked the questions that would consider as psychological violence. For example, were the directive abusive comments, steering, giving hostile looks, and so forth, that we can later combine them to psychological violence, sexual harassment, economic violence. So we had the statements that it would be more recognizable for the respondents what we mean under all those forms of violence. In the qualitative research that we interviewed 54 interviewees, actually the distribution of the forms of violence is very similar. Most often, the psychological violence is experienced, and sexual harassment and economic violence. That, that means that students, particularly PhD students, are not invited to the projects if they are not wanted or, somehow found that they are not very obedient or obedient to the professors and so forth. So they are not informed about possibilities to participate in kind of events that brings financial reward. So yeah, there are a lot of these kind of forms or experiences that in quantitative and qualitative research we noticed. What about reporting? And basically, on the one hand, we see that 62% of respondents said that they experience any form of violence, but reported, it's only like in general 12% reported about experiences of violence. And we can see that students are more willing to report it. The staff is a little bit more confident to report, but anyway, if we will see to the numbers, it's only 23% of staff would report the incidences of gender-based violence or experienced violence. And we can see that the reasons for not reporting the incidences are very diverse, but well, one of the most prevalent reasons is that the respondents were not sure if behavior was serious enough to report, serious enough. This reason was also in the qualitative research that we noticed, that that was like a minor incident that basically you would not say anybody to this because you are not sure, would it be, it is worth to report, would it be taken some action, or how it will be interpreted. So this is one of the main reasons why not reporting. Or did not recognize that the incidence was kind of violence. And in qualitative research particularly, it was said that at that time, I didn't have knowledge. I didn't know, I did not recognize it. So basically, these two particular reasons for not reporting shows the gaps in prevention. That basically that we are talking about gender-based violence, but sometimes we are not talking very specifically what this gender-based violence is. One of the reasons, almost 26% told that did not think that it would happen anything if I will report. This is also very similar incidents, answers in the qualitative research that, I can report, but, I will be troublemaker after that. I will be this paranoid person if I will do. And yeah, nothing will, because usually is that the perpetrator is trusted, but not me as a victim. This is also very similar with the bystanders. When they see what happens, they also are not very confident to go and report or to say to somebody that what they saw, because they are also not sure how it will be, interpreted, and basically they would be questioned, which nobody wants to be done. So basically, this is also shows that protection kind of actions in the universities are not also taking into consideration like a small so-called incidences. Only, there are reporting all mechanisms on the paper, but people are not using them because there are other underlying levels on this. One of the reasons is even do not know whom to tell it. And this is also from the qualitative research, that was very clear in some cases that, people would say, well, I heard that there are some bodies, but where they are, how to find them. And when you speak with the staff, they say that, well, we inform so much our community about existing bodies and so forth. But when you interview students, they say, I am not sure where to find this body. So it shows that, well, information somehow goes not maybe so often, so frequent, and sometimes that, the leadership should, like continue to like put this information all the time without, thinking that we already did, so everybody knows. No. They know, but they forget. So we have to bring this knowledge all the time. Fear of retaliation, that was one of the reasons that also do not report, and particularly students, because in qualitative studies, they told that, well, you don't know then because you have to defend your PhD, your thesis, these people will be in your commission, and if you are in a small country particularly, then, these people are like famous people, not only in university, but also in the country. So basically, your career will be finished if you will start reporting or saying about this. And that was also very striking in one interview that I did myself. That was with the law department students who were saying that we are not talking about what's going on, and there is a lot of sexual harassment there. Law department, and these are law department professors. Then, like it was also, they say that we have to be trained how to investigate and protect people, but basically we are ourselves very often are victims of sexual harassment. So, not very promising knowledge that we collected, but it does not mean that we should not do anything. One more slide about data. It's about trust to university. And here, those answered who experienced and who did not experience. And we can see that those who did not experience, they trust in the university much higher than those who experienced this. We collected all this data. So what we can do with this data? So in this UNICEF project, we suggested and we created this holistic 7P model that is a little bit expanding the UN 3P model and Council of Europe 4P model, but also include not only prevention, protection, prosecution, and policies, but also very important to have prevalence, because we always have to know not only evidence of the prevalence and consequences, but also sometimes to interview those who experienced in a safe environment, to know not only their own experiences, but also what's on the structural level. What policies are effective or maybe not effective? What is not effective? What does not work? What do you know about the policies? What do you know about where to seek for their support? Is any kind of evidence that you know where to go for, I don't know, services and so forth, how university provides this. So a lot of issues we can collect from the data interviewing people. We also have to think that and also engage with the broader community that it is in the university. This partnership with students' organization, partnership with trade unions, partnership with other like informal organizations that are in the universities. And this is also very important because not sometimes all like leadership or coordinators, equality coordinators can do. So basically including the partnership, working together, it might bring much like closer circle that, you know, perpetrators would feel that their like powers are also controlled and limited. And for example, there were examples from the qualitative research when student union engaged in the protection of victims of well, psychological violence, when it was like very clear on the lectures, when professor had the power always humiliated girls in that well, lectures or in that environment. And the student union was going, like one of the representatives going to the lectures, fixing what's going on, making the observation. But it took for them 2 years to somehow remove the professor from the teaching position, especially for the first and second grade. So it is not so easy, but it is still possible because much more actors engages to stop certain behaviors, but also sending the message to the other who might think that they have very huge powers, that, you know, there are control mechanisms, that, you know, you cannot behave as you want. Provision of services, this is not so easy, of course, for the university because these are additional resources, but these are also very important resource for the victims of who experience incidences to go and have this possibility, and to have not only for the students but also for the staff. And these, from the qualitative research, it was very clear that, you know, that when university has this for the staff and for the students, that they can use it. This is also somehow help the victims to empower to go further and to at least to speak with the, not maybe to the, you know, body who investigates complaints, but to talk to the dean about the behaviors that are not accessible for the staff. So all the 7P, it is like united under the policies that, you know, when universities create the policies, all these 7P like principles should be kind of main questions included in that policies, because without them, without working it in with the holistic approach, basically, yeah, that would be much more difficult to go through and to implement the policies. And also about protection, that, you know, should be not only think about the reporting, all the procedures, but about informal reporting and like collecting evidence on informal reporting that that are very important to fix and to react immediately, but not to wait until the violence escalates. And violence is always escalates. It starts from the very small steps, but it always escalates. And at the end, I don't have time, but we have also provided recommendations for the higher education institutions. And one maybe I would just would like to highlight, it is that, you know, universities should take a victim-centered approach in the policies all the time, because this brings, you know, universities much better understanding how violence works and what kind of steps could be taken. Everything is online, so please visit and learn more about our research. Thank you very much.
So, Velana, such an important study, I mean, a terrific study. But I'm interested in those universities who refused to take part. Did they not care? Do they not think they have a problem? Do they have a horrible problem? Or they just can't be bothered prioritizing this? How can we tackle those universities that just won't engage with this issue?
Well, there is a huge resistance in those universities. They think that they don't have these cases, and yeah, and this is, you know, including, it says a lot about universities that, you know, gender equality is not important for them because they think they do a lot, and this is enough. But how to engage them, and this is a huge problem, and I still do not have the answer.
Could we take the data to their boards of governors?
Yes, but you know, like from our case studies, what we notice when we look to the institutional structures and, you know, policies that they implement, that well, women rectors in those universities where women rectors are active, they gender equality policies and policies on gender-based violence are much more effective there. So, and less resistance, but more open what we can do. So, yeah.
Also, I have a question regarding traditional. We think that men are guilty for gender-based violence. Do you have any data from the European research that it could be like women discriminating women or women discriminating men? Do you have such a data? It was not a scope of your research?
Yeah, it was well, of course, that, you know, in our both quantitative and qualitative data, that more women responded to the questions and participated in qualitative research. But in those interviews, we noticed that not only men are perpetrators, although majority, but not always men. Women who have power also are sometimes perpetrators against other women, and majority against other women, much less against other men. But in a few cases, there was few quantitative survey answers that were that women perpetrators, men were victims. But perpetration comes from those who have power.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Our next speaker is Dr. Ramun Jetstieni. And can I remind colleagues in the auditorium that if you're speaking during the presentation, we can hear you, and it will be recorded on the video proceedings. So I please ask you to give the speaker some silence. That would be really helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Dear colleagues, dear guests, it is my pleasure and my honor to be a part of this event and to make my own contribution in framing academia into a more women-friendly environment and community. And thank you for the opportunity to raise a red card. I've always wanted to do that. Okay, so now I would like to present you an international project our university is working on. Yeah, but I guess that I need some technical assistance here.
Can we have some IT support for our speaker? Thank you.
Also, I would like to remind our YouTube viewers to, if they have any questions, just to write in the chat box.
Okay, so our project is called Healthy, and it is very similar to the one my colleague has just presented. We also worked on gender-based discrimination, but in our project, we addressed a wide range of discrimination grounds. The general objective of a Healthy Project is to promote the principles of non-discrimination and common European values in higher education. It boosts connection among universities in Lithuania, Spain, and Austria, and elaborates innovative, inclusive content that counters xenophobic, racist, sexist discourse and other forms of intolerance that Europe faces today. 3 partner universities, it's our university, Mykolas Riomeris University, University of Vienna, and Salamanca University in Spain. So all partners focused on different grounds of discrimination, while Mykolas Riomeris University contributed to gender equality topic. A mixed method research approach was employed to assess the needs, the challenges, and solutions regarding gender equality at universities. We started with an online questionnaire survey for students, and more than 900 students from all 3 universities engaged in this activity. Then in the next stage, Then in the next, okay. Thank you for your patience. So in the next stage, we did 3 focus groups with technical staff, administrative staff, and students. So 3 focus groups in each university. And we employed 5 to 7 respondents. A set of useful and interesting data was derived, and to put them short, we did not notice any major alerts. However, more than 8% of students claimed to be personally discriminated, and more than 12% of them witnessed unequal treatment at the universities. Not surprisingly, in terms of prevalence, gender-based discrimination follows just after nationality, ethnicity, and origin. When it comes to the type of discrimination, inter alia gender-sensitive grounds were declared in the form of hate speech, sexual harassment, stalking, sexual violence. But the most important finding was that university communities are really concerned regarding gender issues. Most of the respondents reacted actively to biased treatment. Usually it was a non-formal intervention, for example, as immediate or delayed victim support. 9% of students opted for a formal response by reporting violation to appointed personnel. That means that academic community is sensitive and intolerant to gender-based violence. On the other hand, the respondents expressed their expectations to be assisted and consolidated in this commitment, mostly by clear and solid communication, by establishing and promoting a culture of equality, by awareness raising, by shaping the study curriculum, by special, targeted, and comprehensive personnel training, and most importantly, by establishing clear and transparent reporting procedures and ensuring victim support system. Therefore, Referring to the needs identified, we developed a research-based MOOC to increase knowledge and skills of students, teachers, and administrative staff, to ensure substantive gender equality and inclusion, as well as support diversity at the university. Here we address main concepts, their development, and how most prevalent forms of gender-based violence are relevant in the context of higher education. We strongly rely on universities as sustainable change agents in policy development, women leadership, and students' activism. This MOOC is in testing stage now. But soon it will be an open access online tool, subtitled in English, that consists of educational videos, self-tests, discussion forums, and links to further studying. To conclude, I want to invite you to watch a trailer of the MOOC so you can get a better idea what it's all about.
Moterų padėtis aukštajame moksle labai priklauso nuo politinės sistemos, žmogaus teisių būklės atitinkamam regione, atitinkamai valstybei, nuo kultūros, nuo tradicijų, nuo religijos. Pavyzdžiui, Afganistanas, ar ne, kai sugrįžus Talibano režimui, mes ne tik, kad nematome moterų lyderystės ir įgalinimo, bet yra sprendžiamas klausimas apskritai apie elementarių žmogaus teisių nebuvimą, tai yra moteris neteko teisės į švietimą, nekalbant jau apie aukštąjį mokslą. Ir tokių valstybių pavyzdžių yra ne vienas.
Visgi lyčių lygybės kol kas mes neturime tiek Lietuvoje, tiek ir kitose Europos šalyse. Jeigu lyginsime, kiek dirba aukštajame moksle vyrų ir moterų, tai moterų aukštajame moksle 2022-2023 studijų metais buvo 4,5 tūkstančio, vyrų 3,5 tūkstančio. Jeigu mes tiksliname, kokias pareigybės jos užima, žemiausiame lygmenyje asistento lektoriaus dominuoja moterys. Kuo aukštesnė pareigybė, tuo moterų skaičius yra mažesnis.
Jeigu mes kalbam apie Lietuvos studentų sąjungą, tai čia statistika yra kur kas liūdnesnė. Per visą istoriją, tai yra 32 metus, mergina prezidentė buvo viena ir iki šiol vaikinai užima šią poziciją.
Aš puikiai prisimenu, kad jau geroką laiką, pavyzdžiui, studentų tarpe dauguma buvo moterų, merginų. Tas procentas pasiekdavo 70% savivaldos institucijose ir jeigu kalbėtume apie rektorių, dekanus, tai daugiausia buvo vyrai.
Net ir akademinėje bendruomenėje aš dar girdžiu kalbas, kad tarp mūsų yra darbai, kurie yra labiau tinkantys vyrams arba kurie labiau yra tinkantys moterims. Tokios kalbos parodo, kad to virsmo iki galo mes dar nepatyrėme, arba tiksliau, kad jo nepatyrė dar visi.
Taip pat yra reiškinys kaip šališkumas lyčių atžvilgių, kada įsivaizduojama, kad moteris savo orumu ir teisėmis neprilygsta vyrams. Pavyzdžiui, laikoma, kad nerimta yra cituoti moterų straipsnius, prestižiniais ir solidžiais ir potencialiai vertais apdovanojimų laikomi verti tik mokslininkai vyrai.
Užsiėmimų metu vis dar iškyla diskusijos apie moters vietą visuomenėje, daug išreiškiama stereotipinių požiūrių apie moteris, apie jų prastesnius gebėjimus, kad, pavyzdžiui, moteris blogiau už vyrus vairuoja automobilius, arba apie ribotas moterų teises, kad moteris neturi teisės savarankiškai spręsti dėl abortų. Taip pat buvo papasakoti ir seksualinio priekabiavimo atvejų universitetuose, tiek skirtingų lyčių dėstytojų ir studentų, tiek tarp skirtingų lyčių administracijos darbuotojų. Paprastai yra neaišku, į ką tiksliai galima kreiptis patyrus seksualinį priekabiavimą, diskriminaciją ar kitokį nederamą elgesį asmens atžvilgiu ir teigia, jog teisinės procedūros universitetuose beveik neegzistuoja.
Wow, ateitis arčiau lyčių lygybės. Prieš 20 metų būčiau tikrai atsakiusi kitaip, su daug didesniu optimizmu negu šiandien, nes demokratiniai procesai pasaulyje vis dažniau, stipriau ir vis skaudesnėmis pasekmėmis susiduria su ekstremizmu, terorizmu ir antigender judėjimu.
Lytis apskritai yra labai įdomi tokia kategorija, tai nėra tik tai biologinė kategorija, tai nėra tik tai demografinis kintamasis, o jisai be galo daro didelį įtaką visuomenės raidai, visuomenės gyvenimo kokybei.
Akademinė bendruomenė, universitetai, jie formuoja asmenybės, jie prisideda prie žmogaus raidos. Ir lyčių lygybė juk yra apie tai, kad mes galbūt turėsime daugiau žmonių, kurie gali kurti, prisidėti prie visuomenės gerovės ir klestėjimų. Ir akademinėje bendruomenėje svarbu apie tai kalbėti ir veikti.
Dauguma aukštojo mokslo baigusių žmonių, jie paskui vėliau užima vadovaujančias pareigas, jie atsirinkinėja darbuotojus, kaip tai veikia jų tas kasdieninius sprendimus. Be to, dalis žmonių, kurie yra baigę aukštąjį mokslą, jie toliau daro įvairias politinės karjeras, valstybinių tarnautojų karjeras, kurie užima tas pozicijas, kurie gali priimti strateginius valstybės lygio sprendimus, kurti politiką įvairiose srityse. Ir jeigu jie turi tą suvokimą, tą jautrumą, įvairovės apskritai, tai bus jų kapitalas, kuris gali pozityviai veikti jau paskui vėlesnės naujestas politikas.
Pradėčiau gal nuo to, kad jeigu jūs galvojate, kad jūsų neliečia šitą temą, tai jūs labai klystat dėl to, kad tai liečia jūsų mamas, jūsų dukras, jūsų drauges, merginas ir visas kitas moteris jūsų gyvenime. Tai aš tikrai labai skatinu visus kalbėti apie tai, kelti savo seminaruose ir paskaitose provokuojančius klausimus, kurie galėtų išvesti į gilesnės diskusijas. Rašykite apie tai darbus, kaip ir aš tą dariau, pasikartosiu. Jeigu mes nieko nedarysim, ta prasme, niekas ir nepasikeis.
Neieškokime sudėtingų schemų. Jų tiesiog nereikia. Ar mes kalbėtume apie lyderystę, ar apie verslo vadybą, ar apie politiką, imkime praktinius pavyzdžius ir diskutuokime. Kai aš paskaitos metu, pavyzdžiui, analizuoju rinkimus ar rinkimų sistemas, logiška kalbėti ir diskutuoti su studentais, pavyzdžiui, apie tai, kaip keitėsi požiūris į moterų teisę balsuoti arba kaip keičiasi moterų dalyvavimo politikoje situacija apskritai. Ir studentai tikrai natūraliai įsitraukia į tas diskusijas.
Kalbant apie universitetų įsipareigojimus studentams ir studentėms, universitetai turi užkirsti kelią diskriminacijai ir smurtui bei priekabiavimui, turi reaguoti į skundus dėl to ir turėti vidinius mechanizmus, kaip su tuo tvarkytis. O taip pat turi pasiūlyti tokį švietimą, kuris būtų pagrįstas į lyčių lygybę atsižvelgiančią pedagogiką. Kalbant apie universitetą ar mokslo įstaigą kaip darbdavį, šis be abejo negali diskriminuoti dėl lyties ir turi užkirsti kelią smurtui, seksualiniam priekabiavimui. Be to, iš europinių universitetų yra tikimasi, kad šie turės lyčių lygybės planus.
Mykolo Romerio universitetas pamažu tampa pavyzdžių tam tikrose sferose kitiems universitetams.
Kviečiam prisijungti.
Okay, so currently we are finalizing the deliverables of this project. So stay tuned and we will update you on the progress. Thank you. Thanks for your attention.
And Ruben, this isn't really a difficult question because that was a fantastic presentation. But we heard there, gender policies are important, but and plans. But we've also heard from other presenters, sometimes plans aren't implemented, they're tick boxes. I want you to share with me how important you think a values-led approach is in terms of leadership in this important area.
Well, to my mind and to the team of our project, this is the message we want to convey. It's like the most important element to show leadership and to ensure and promote the culture grounded with values, especially the principle of non-discrimination.
Thank you so much. Brilliant. Thank you. So, colleagues, now we're moving to a more general discussion, and we're looking forward very much, both of us, to receiving your questions. How are we going to access the online one? So we're going to hopefully have some online questions. My colleagues going to facilitate the online questions. Anybody in the audience have a question for our really outstanding presenters? Yes, Gulson.
I have no question, but I would like to make a comment.
Could you pop your microphone on? Thank you.
Okay. I have no question, but I have a comment. If we look at the, whole population, and we know that half of the population are more or less female, the other half is male. So I think the key issue is this. If we have equal representation at every segment of life, it will be very practical to solve the problem. When you are in minority, you are always, under the pressure of the other big population. So this is not an easy, task to be solved, overnight. But we have to take into account to achieve this balance at every segment of life. Of course, all of the measures taken in many aspects of life, trying to save the minorities, women in our case, from the violence. But as far as I can see, we have not been very successful yet. So I'm thinking about how to increase. I'm coming from a technical university. I depend on the numbers, very much. So it is, when you have equal, representation, it will be much easier to save yourself and your group. Otherwise, we will always be under the pressure of these violations. So that should be the target. That's my comment. It's not easy, I know, but we have to think about it seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your remark regarding the balance. I totally agree that we as universities, as organizations, need probably quotas to establish the balance between gender representations at our institutions, and it would be a powerful tool. And I also would like to hear maybe opinion from other, our international partners in Sweden, in the US. Maybe you have such a solution, how to balance between the men and women. And also I have another question about more vulnerable people. For example, the world is migrating. There are many migrants in Europe, and in the US, and in other parts of the world. And women with migrant background, probably they are even more vulnerable to violence. How to protect the more vulnerable people among us? Maybe you have some data or some experience in your universities. How do you deal with those issues? Or maybe in Poland also you have some examples to share with us.
And could you say who you are and where you come from when you answer questions or ask questions? Thank you.
Can I join to the discussion? Lucyna Woźniak, Medical University of Łódź, Poland. I have one comment which is connected with the data that have been provided today. I have a feeling, and especially in the first survey, where we had 46 universities, I think, around Europe, there were quite big differences between different countries and different universities. So it would be very useful to have medianos presented during these discussions, so we know where are the limits. Because otherwise we get the average value, which, as you know from the statistics, does not respond to a real situation. We have cultural differences, legal differences, societal differences. And these increase the differences, the total limits that we have between different countries and different universities. So this is my first comment as a researcher and also from the technical university, basing on numbers. And my second question is whether in our discussions we are not limiting ourselves only to the universities. Universities are part of the society. Universities are not isolated, are not separated from the society. Therefore, I would say that we have to think much more about the education of the society about violence, not only particularly at the universities. Universities are a very small part of the society, probably less than 10% in our countries in average. So they can't be analyzed, isolated from the situation of the societies in these countries.
Thank you very much for bringing forward the impact of the university to the society. Maybe, Vilana, can you comment on this?
Yeah, I do agree, but universities can be this cultural change in advance, that, they can show that, that they are not repeating the same patterns what are in society. Unfortunately, we cannot say like this. On the other hand, I will take this comment about, the mean numbers. Well, the methodology was prepared in a way that, that participated very different countries and 3 universities per country. So basically, you cannot compare between countries. The other thing is that even though that we have different countries with different cultures, with different policies, to a certain extent, there are differences and similarities, but the experiences are the same. And this is, was resembled not only in the quantitative survey, but also qualitative survey. In the qualitative survey, we managed to invite even the students from the same universities who participated in the survey, because in the survey we have a possibility, like for those who wanted to share their stories, they could, approach us. So basically, these are very close. So there was no time to, because you need 45 minutes to present everything. Just the reason of this, task of this presentation was more on policies that, on the solutions, but just to give the content. But that all the, we cannot say that in some countries, there is less discrimination or less violence, and other more. Basically, this is power relationships that are at stake. And power, unfortunately, we have to analyze in gender terms, in other intersectional perspective. We brought to the study intersectional perspective. We saw that those people who have diverse backgrounds, including ethnic, race, sexual orientation, disability, they are much more vulnerable to discrimination and also gender-based violence. That is, and the policies that we did in institutional policies, particularly in the universities, in the 46 universities, that policies do not approach intersectional approach. In some, that there is including ethnic backgrounds or race, but policies on gender-based violence particularly, it's not including other grounds. Some universities, they do. Some advanced universities in Sweden, for example, but not all. But in many countries, EU countries, do not even approaching, leaving like separate. Like discrimination, yes, all backgrounds as in the national legislation, but in the institutional policies on gender-based violence, on prevention or protection of sexual harassment, ethnicity, disability, sexual orientation is not included very often.
I would agree that, that university leaders will be more effective in ending gender-based violence if we engage a larger community. And it is why, once we affiliated ourselves with this NGO, Arden, and they are much more broadly civil society organized, this gave us opportunity to engage with the local city council and with other organizations that had similar interests, so that when we convened speakers and summits and conferences, we could tap those individuals and start to feel like we had a larger impact than just focusing on our campus community. I agree, it's really important.
So, thank you very much for, it has been very interesting to listen to the other presentations here today. And I agree with that, but also the important role of universities to train the future leaders in society. So that is, if we can really incorporate this in our educational programs in a good way, and to do that we need a good leadership, of course, and taking the point of departure in human rights, because if we do that, we can also become better in preventing discrimination and in vulnerable groups of people. So I think we can't just focus on gender equality. We must widen our perspective to human rights on a more broad sense, if we really want to contribute to a better world in this sense, I think. So, thank you.
Do we have another question from the floor?
Comments, insights?
Bilana?
I don't know. I would like to ask panelists or maybe somebody from the audience, because from the research that we did, to a certain extent, I was a little bit, how to say, when doing, I got a lot of also resistance from, especially leadership, that, you know, they didn't want to engage in the survey, or they didn't want to do interviews, or they did not see the problem itself, that, you know, why we have to talk about gender-based violence in the university. This is not in, like, why we have to raise this. And when you start to speak about numbers, then they say, but, well, the students, they manipulate, they are lazy, they do not want to do certain things, and then accuse our poor teachers that they do these bad things and so forth. And yeah, like in some universities, I saw that there are, like, when there is a very strong leadership, they say that, for example, gender equality is like, you know, like, brush your teeth, you know. You do it every day, so you have to do it every day. But in some universities, there was a huge resistance. So I just wonder what could be strategies or some good practices how to bring this issue, not to get resistance, but just at least to engage in listening to the problem and, you know, understanding.
Gulsen, you want to answer?
Well, all of the things, all of the comments are right, but I will go back to the representation again. If we have 50% of the rectors female and 50% of the all Senate and at every level equal representation, then it will be easier for women who are under this risk express themselves. But when they look at around, see male rector there. Majority of the Senate, majority of the executive committee are all dominated by males. So how can you express your sincere, trouble? I mean, how is it possible? Because your hopes are getting smaller and smaller when you look around. So most of the young women prefer not to, make a claim about it. So this equality in representation has a vital importance to prevent sexual harassment in universities.
And I think we all agree, but I think we also have seen from the data that is a long way off. I think I would say boards of governors and trustees are really have to make management, university executive and management, accountable for delivering on these policies and plans. And perhaps it's not a quick fix, but we actually demand that boards of governors measure this issue in every single university and hold executive accountable for making change happen. It's not perfect, but it's just one action I think we could do immediately. Beth?
I also found that, since we are not at that level yet, that as we put together work groups and task forces and engagement groups, it was really important to identify male allies that would help this cause. Because you're right, if you're only speaking from the minority position, even if you are the leader of the organization, you're not going to get much hearing. And so I really had to have a broad base of students and faculty and fellow administrators who would embrace this and be the voice.
I am Sonda Andurkan Olufez, rector of Kadir Has University in Istanbul, and I want to share my experience. I have been the rector of the university since 2018. I didn't specifically do something, but the number of women students in my institution is increased from 50% to 60%. And what else I also realized that the women students, they are verbal, they're coming. They do complain about when they have an experience of sexual harassment. And when the administration takes the right steps, if you have to kick the faculty member out of the university, you have to kick the faculty out of the university. And then they are coming. And remember, from your numbers, the percentage of the students and the faculty, they do not report. That's a big question. Why they don't report? Because they don't believe that there's going to be something if I report. So role model is important, and taking the necessary step when there is a complaint about this one, that will help fixing the problem locally in any institution. Thank you.
Any other contributions? Yes.
Hello, my name is Vilius Alesius. I work here as an events organizer. But I wanted to share my experience from my previous work at a way smaller university than this. So we had the real case of one faculty member, a very good artist, who wanted to make his exhibition, and he announced this exhibition in our university's social media, and then it started. The comments under the message from his, let's say, victims, female students from previous years. It was going like 10 to 10 years ago from the experiences, and there were like more than 10 cases with sexual harassment. He was even like having sexual, how to say, sexual experience with the students. He was inviting them to his house, to his home. But the thing is that I wanted also to join you, that students or previous students, they don't trusted universities' bodies to comply like to the academic ethical commission or anywhere else. So that's the thing, is that only in social media, it's also the role of social media now is very important as well, because they can express themselves there and show these cases. So, but in the real also cases, it's very hard to collect the proofs and also to start the procedures of expelling the faculty member from lectures and so on, because we have very strict labor laws protecting every worker. So when you have, for example, this case was also very public in the media. And the university's administration was under big pressure from media and other social groups, and you are between these fires, and officially you cannot do anything, because it's in your procedures, written in university's procedures. It's saying that ethical commission has to deal with these cases, but there were no compliances to the ethical commission, so we cannot do nothing. So we collected external experts groups, because the victim says we can talk only to external experts. We won't talk to universities' bodies, but to external experts, plus one journalist had to be there. So after that, they witnessed it. University's rector expelled a faculty member from his job. But then, of course, the labor court started, and so on, so on. So it's very, very hard procedures that I wanted to share.
Thank you so much for sharing it. And it just points to, Ramin, your point that students and staff have to have trust in the procedures and policies of their university, and that they will be implemented and acted on.
And I think that there are some glass ceilings, glass borders. Everybody speaks about that. There is legislation, there are procedures, but somehow people are prevented from reporting, from analyzing the cases. How to break those glass walls and glass ceilings, and to bring justice to our university. Maybe some panelists can.
Yeah. Ramin, do you want to comment on that brave question and case study from our gentleman in the audience?
Yes, that was a very nice example, and I think it's a matter of practice. I mean, if we have more complaints, we will develop the procedures. Yeah, we will develop the standard, and it's from my point of view, it's not a criminal proceeding, so it's not criminal prosecution. So the standard or the burden of proof is much lower. Yeah, so I would encourage to open the procedures and to be brave in doing it, because this is how we develop the system. And one more point, we need very clear and transparent procedures. Yeah, that's helpful.
But the students didn't trust the procedures in that institution, did they?
Can I? Yeah. I think we need more leadership training in this area, and to become better in preventing discrimination in an earlier stage. So it's also there is a need of cultural change in our universities. And leadership training, I think, and to base the training on also these very good studies we have conducted now to learn to understand better. But of course, also social media, and so it's very stressful to become an academic leader or manager because it's not so easy to handle these complex situations. Yeah.
Yeah, because that case, that the students who complained was like they experienced 10 years ago. I mean, they did not complain immediately, and it took for them when they established, they can complain. And this is, I think that universities should have very clear procedures, but should not put burden on victim to report. Because it's very difficult especially for the students, PhD student, to report. It's, you don't know how you will finish with your PhD studies and with your career. So, why there is no trust? Fear of retaliation is very, very, highly expressed fear. I think that it should be like formal procedures, but it should be kind of informal procedures. And I remember in our project, there was one colleague from some UK institution who told that when they started to talk with their law department, how, to proceed with the complaints, and then the lawyers are always saying, this is not possible, this is not possible, this is not. So, tell us what it is possible, what we can do, that it would be legal, but possible. And this is, I think, that, changes a little bit thinking, but also collecting evidence, even that it is not a formal procedure, but collecting evidence that about one person, there is one complaint, and then what you can do with this informal information. Not so much, but you're collecting. You can speak with that person, saying very informally, we got some complaint. Of course, it will be denial, but if there is another the evidence, then you can start to look what it is possible. Maybe some procedures are possible. I'm not a lawyer, so it's difficult, but even having this information, I mean that the students also are very creative, what they are putting on media, that this person, social media is not worth working, and people talk. With this professor, it's better not to have anything common. They're withdrawing from the project, and then the project is in trouble. It could be in trouble and so forth. So there are the ways, and formal procedures, that's fine, but it should be the way informally also to engage and to help victims to have the voice and trust them. That is also, I think, that one, at least, from the qualitative research that I had, trust you, you can then complain. But if there is no, even, in this informal way, any trust, you will not do anything because it's too much dangerous.
Thank you. And the final comment from the floor will go to Regina.
Yes, final comment will be prevention instead of collection of cases. Formal procedures are long-term procedures. There are appealing procedures, and it takes a long time to come to the conclusion at the end. It's especially difficult in the case of students and PhD students who are for a short time at the university, and probably the procedures will not finish before they finish their courses. So prevention is, I think, crucial in my opinion, because I'm afraid that starting formal procedures does not give equal approach for victim and accused person. I don't know how it is in your countries, but in Poland, for example, the accused person has right to a lawyer during the procedures. However, the victim has no right to do this, to take lawyer with him or her. So there is no equality even in the best procedures, unless they are not criminal procedures, prosecution, normal procedures outside the university. So at the university, prevention is a top for me, for the top position to reduce and the cases of violence, of gender issues, or violence of human rights in general.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Do we have any additional questions online, Ameda?
Not as in the whole.
Not as yet. So I will just make some short remarks, and then I will pass over to my colleague for her closing remarks. I think it's been wonderful presentations from everybody. Thank you for your intellectual contribution. Thank you to audience members for your intellectual contribution and questions and answers to what is a really difficult issue, thorny issue. How do we create gender violence-free societies? I think we've concluded that universities are important change agents, but they can't act alone. They are necessary but not sufficient, and they must act with other partners in society and in societies that are in ever-changing landscapes, be they subject to changes in government policies or other kinds of crises in our societies. The landscape's always shifting, and universities have to operate within that. But I think we heard this morning that universities can be exemplars of good practice. They can provide us with really important evidence and data. They can provide us with toolkits, social media support, programs for change, red cards against bias and discrimination. They're training the future leaders of society, but the leaders of our universities themselves, be they male and hopefully more female, have to privilege this issue and understand it's important that they must be champions for change themselves. So I think it's been a truly illuminating morning, and I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed listening to your comments.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your kind contribution and the discussion afterwards. I think we talked about very subtle issues. Sometimes they're difficult to identify, difficult to define sometimes. We have about maybe 50 years of experience talking about those issues, but still we didn't move forward a lot. We made a progress. We have research-based data. We have different experience from different cultures, from the US, from Sweden, from Poland, from Turkey, Lithuania, other countries of Europe, Portugal. And we can learn a lot from each other, actually, and to share best practices and to have the balance in universities and other organizations. And actually, universities are not islands, as it was brought forward. We are like a part of the society, and the future leaders go through our universities. We need to equip them through our alumni networks, through our students, to build like a better, a more just society for a 10-year perspective or even longer. And I think that we need to be encouraged and to join our forces to combat gender-based violence in our societies currently and for the future. And I liked this red card approach very much, and I'm thinking about our university, that we need to equip our students and all our employees with this red card. And when there is subtle issue within like glass walls or glass ceilings, we just raise this card, and I think it would be evident to everybody to find another venue of communicating the issue. Yeah. So thank you very much for your contribution, and thank you very much for attending, for listening, for sharing, and I think it's just one step forward to a better, safe, and more just societies. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And please enjoy snacks and coffee.